Good morning. Welcome to those of you who are already here. I've got let me grab the chat box so I can see who's popping in. All right. Hi, Kristen. Hey, we're having a beautiful sunny day in the foothills today as well, as you are in Livermore, so that's good. Please, as always, pop into the chat box. Let me know that some of you are coming on, and kind of give a few minutes before we get started with that. And hoping that for most of you, hi Lynn, it's always good to see your little picture there. Hi Denise and Melanie. Alice, snowy Ohio. Yes, Linda, probably some snow there too. Hi Dot. All right. People are coming on. This is wonderful. I really hope you've had a good week and that you got your fabrics figured out and chosen for your block of the month that we're doing. I'm excited for this one as it's kind of coming together. I can tell it's going to be really nice. It's going to be pretty. I want to share with you an image that I got from Cheryl, and Cheryl has finished her quilt, our last one that we put together, and it turned out absolutely beautifully. This is the first time she's done a Bethlehem star, a Lone Star, whatever name you want to give to this pattern, and I think she just did a beautiful job. And just to see it all together, and with all of the border and everything, it's just beautiful. And so if any of you finish up with your projects and stuff, or you've been working on something that you'd like to share with the rest of us, please send it my way, and we'll pop it on the screen so that we can all enjoy the work you've done. Good job, Cheryl. All right, so today we're going to be looking at the first 2 months, January and February of this, the block of the month. And we'll get ready for the sewing of March and April next time. So today I want to talk a little bit about, a couple of different things and ways that you can work on your half square triangles a little bit, talk a little bit about what helps when you have a pattern like this one where where the entire block is basically half square triangles. You want to get those points to meet, and all that perfection in there. And know that I don't push for perfection, because as you've seen on camera, I'm not quite there, and most of us probably aren't, and I don't know that should be an end goal on anyone's part, because, well, I shouldn't say those things, because we're all different, but that takes the joy right out of it. It just sucks the life right out of my quilting when I'm stressing so much about I have to be perfect. And even starting doing this, what I'm doing, it took a minute for me to be able to say, I've got to let that go, because I'm live on camera. I'm doing things that are different from what I normally do. And when I make mistakes, you guys are so generous and wonderful, and with that, and you can learn from my mistakes as well. So we want to work on those half square triangles, and I need to grab something that I don't see in front of me, and I can see one over on my cutting table, so I'll be right back. I am a huge advocate. Let me drop down to my table here. I'm a huge advocate of the star singles, and we used these before, and they make 8 half square triangles all at once, and they come out with such perfection that I really enjoy them because I don't really have to do any trimming or anything on them. The one thing that I can say about these, they would still work. And if you have, something that you're doing or working on, or that's using a variety of colors of half square triangles, or you want to put something together like that, then use these. But most of these patterns don't have 8 of the same color because it's from a charm pack. So even though I personally love this, we're not going to talk about how to make them with those. But we are going to talk about the 2 ways that I think will work best for us here, and just a couple of notes about this. So this is the January block. We picked out the fabrics last week, and I want to say a little bit something about that because I wish I would have done it differently, but obviously I don't wish that enough that I went back and recut and changed things. But somehow in light looking at it, bad eyes, whatever, I got a couple of squares that were exactly the same, and I didn't mean to do that. And I'd probably change that up and be a little bit more careful as I was looking at that, just for the variety in the block itself. And so I am looking at that more carefully as I finished off last week the rest of my blocks, picking out the fabrics for it. And I'll continue to do that as each month passes. So I wanted to kind of say that to you in terms of choosing the fabrics for your blocks. So now we're going to get into the half square triangle. I went ahead and made most of mine, but didn't sew the block necessarily together completely because I wanted these 2 colors to be in with the squares that I'm sewing. But as we sew our squares together, we're going to be sewing them, and they more or less look like a flying geese. And this is where where the perfection comes in. You want those points, and you want that 1/4 inch to be at the crossroads, because when we sew it, I just want to show you on the ruler, and you might even want to do this for yourself for a couple of the first ones. When I put my 1/4 inch line next to that green, and it's it's lined up there, what you will notice is that you have where this seam and this seam meet, that little V is to the right of your ruler. And with that being not covered up with that V, you are going to have the space of the thread to press it to, whichever way you're going to press it, to the right or left when it opens up, or even flatten it. And you're going to get a point that is going to then meet here. So for those who are really working on, that accuracy in your sewing, that's a way to double check it when you're done, or even as you sew. But the one thing about when you're sewing, if you're coming down here and you realize that your 1/4 inch seam is fatter than the 1/4 inch seam needs to be, and you're cutting off that, where that point comes in there, and you swerve over, you're going to get this little mountain. So the 1/4 inch really needs to be a 1/4 inch all the way down. That being said, that sounds like a lot of perfection, doesn't it? So let me talk to you about the 2 ways that we're going to tackle this. And I also want to tell you today that I still don't have my regular sewing machine back, so I'm using my little travel one that is when it turns on, it kind of sounds like a something taking off, like a plane taking off. It's kind of noisy today, so you'll see that, you'll hear and see the difference with that. So the first one that I want to show you is sewing, marking it. And I have on my machine, and I'll talk about that in a minute, this Sew Steady mat. And I kind of rigged it for this little machine because it really doesn't fit on it. And I didn't mess up my cabinet from my regular machine to get it flat with the top. So I kind of got it rigged. But I am going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of this marking. I marked it simply for the sake of you seeing it on the camera. All right. Let me just, before I do that, let me see if anybody has. Welcome, Julie. I'm glad you're here today. First time. Oh, Linda, welcome back. It's good to see your name there again. Yes, my machine has been in the shop for about a month now, so I get that. All right, so let me grab the camera, and we've got a glare over here because I could not figure out how to cover my my light, so it's got a little bit of a glare, but I think you'll be able to see it. Now this machine, my 1/4 inch, has the blade on the side, and if you use the blade on your machine, which is fine, but just double check your 1/4 inch, because on this machine, for whatever reason, it has some wobble to it. And if I'm not careful, and it's on here tight, it's not that it's loose or I haven't tightened it, but it has some, it has some give in that. And I discovered soon after I got this little machine for travel, that if I set my blade on that line up there, I can get a pretty good, but when I put it down onto the fabric, I'll line it up before I put it down, but I have to adjust it, because when I set it down, it almost looks like the blade goes off to the right. And I don't know if any of the rest of you pay that close of attention to all of your, as you're putting feet down. But on my Sew Steady mat, I can follow my 1/4 inch seam line that is right here. And so if I have, my, the point, I don't know if I can fold it up enough so you can see it on camera, but if I fold that up so that this is following on right under my needle, my 1/4 inch line that I'm going to be sewing is going to be, either here or here, and I can just follow that and I don't have to mark the lines, which I really, really love about the Sew Steady mat. So here we go. And so I am sewing so that that foot is on that line, but really for me, I watch down here because I do know that this is that is correct, and I have to keep thinking that I have to manually lift my foot. All right. So I'll turn it around, get that back under there, making sure my point is at the foot, and it is there, so I can sew that. And I'm watching this down here where my point is, and making sure that it's nice and flat. All right. So this is my first way of, and I don't necessarily use my ruler to this, to cut it in half. And I am going to probably, I'm going to, on this block, let me come over here. On this block, I'm just going to press to the dark side. And as always, setting the, your seam, pulling it back, running the side right down next to it so it's nice. It's going to be nice and flat, and trying not to move your all right, so we have these. Really, if you have it all set up straight, there's very little trimming that you have to do. But I am going to trim because there is a little bit of a sliver here and there on some of them. But I really want to line up my 45-degree angle, and I start with my bottom corner and getting that as close to that 3.5 that I can, so that it's going to be trimmed almost perfectly. And the green is lined up right there, and then I make sure that I have it in meeting in that corner up there before I start to trim it. And this is always awkward for me to trim, simply because of the little bit of room that I have here. And another reason why I love these rulers, because I can move them around without them. Let me get this mess out of here. All right. So again, now I can really line that up and be very careful about it in that corner. And again, my lines are at the edge of the fabric, not on it. And I just moved it, so I'm going to straighten that back out again. And my 45-degree line runs just to the, it's laying right on that 45-degree line. And here I can already tell there's very little that I'm trimming off of that. The top was a different story. And I can't always see as well when I'm sitting down, and I can see that that got a little bit mushed there. So this one I'm going to have to be careful when I sew. So that is one way to make your half square triangles. The other way, and this time I am going to use my ruler because I do want to have that exactly. When I shared with you about marking last time, this time I want to still be just slightly off of the points on each end, because again, my blade takes up a little bit of that that space, and I'm going to do it the same with so I'm cutting them in half this time. I generally do not make my half square triangles this way, and it's simply because it's this way that you have more way to stretch the fabrics, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to get that. So now, to make sure that I get this exactly right, I'm going to start at the point, and I am going to drop a pin in this one because of just the fact that you've cut them separately, and I want that corner so I don't see green and I don't see white. And then if by some chance I haven't cut that center exactly the way I want it to be, it's going to be okay. But I think I did a pretty decent job today on camera. So I put that in so that I can sew that 1/4 inch seam line along there. So let's go back, and let me get my threads here so I don't lose them under there, because it's kind of And the other thing that is slightly annoying about this is that I don't have my hover thing that I have on my other sheet. Boy, we get spoiled, don't we? And this time I'm going to make sure I can follow my line right along there that you can see, so I have my 1/4 inch, because I know that that is correct on there. So and you really can't pull it. All you're doing with your hands is guiding it and not pulling it. And here, you know, you can easily check to see if you have your 1/4 inch seam. So take that out, and now I'm going to do my pressing the same way on this, setting my threads, pressing back, and let's see how it looks on that. So with my 3.5, and again, you know, it looks pretty well. I usually need to stand, so I'm not gonna cut, because I'm seeing more fabric up there than I probably should, and I can't always see because I'm looking at it from an angle instead of straight down. So I'm not gonna cut it. I'll cut it later, because I've already shown you the cutting of that. But that is how we get to that. So let me take these two, and they are different, so I'm good with that, because we're going to get our, you know, I've made this one, all right, and now on the pattern, as you can see, they're getting you to do your half square triangles. Then you're going to make 2 units of the what looks like a flying geese. You'll sew them each together, then sew those 2 units together to get the block. And then I already sewed the 4 patch together, because it's simply a 4 patch. And then you'll create the block from that. So now I want to turn that correct, because when they get sewn together, they'll look like that. And I want to switch those around, I think. Okay, to that. All right, so now I had, for some reason in my brain, it's not looking like it was supposed to. And I'm talking to myself, mostly. All right. And I'm going to drop a needle on both ends of this. And as always, I know that I'm being repetitive all the time, but I just kind of talk through what I'm doing in this, and that is I want to line up the edges, because if there's any easing that needs to be done, I can do that as I'm sewing in here. And I sew from this end and not start here, because I get a better angle at it coming at it this way. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. And I'm going to move that pin. I got it a little bit close to and now I can get rid of that pin. And let's see how I did. right, so we met in the middle. Now, you know, I would probably encourage in some ways maybe not to press a block quite yet, because this block is going, and I press this one to the left, so I'll want to press this one to the right so that I will have that my seams going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to press it this way. So we'll get that. Set the seam, open it, and now I can, and I'll look just to make sure that when I have this 1/4 inch seam set in the middle, I'll pull it back and make sure that they truly do meet up at that 1/4 inch, and I can press them tightly together so I do know that they're, and since there's new people watching, you know, fairly frequently on the show, I press across the seam to hold it in place. That way I can sew into the seam and see where I'm sewing before I pull the pin, and I don't have two of them that I would have to pull out as I'm getting close to there, and it would it sometimes moved my seam. So then I'm going to go back, and I want to get those corners together exactly where I need them to be. All right, then let me go back, get that under my machine. And when I get to this point, I usually use my stiletto to make sure that it is down and it's going to stick under there. And I don't know that you can really, no, I don't think you can see it, but I'm right here and I can see that my thread and my needle I'm going to hit at the beginning of that V that I talked to you about before. So I'm going to take a couple more stitches so I can go right there. Now I can pull this pin, and my fabric is not going to shift because I had it at that angle, and I could sew one stitch into my seam line and do that. All right. So now when I open that, I have a center that those four actually meet in there. Now because of the bulk of here, there are those who would say flatten these seams out when you press them, okay? And there are those who all press their seams open, but without sewing a real tight one, I can see through those stitches, and so I don't want those, I call them holes, but whatever. So I will take my fingers this way on this side off of the seam, and this way, and I'll twist them so that they go in opposite directions, and I can flatten out the bulk in the center there. And I've got and sometimes the thread doesn't completely break, so I need to go in and help it break. And then I have a little, and I'm being very awkward today with that, so I just need to get this one going this way, and that thread is just not going to give it up for me. So let me get my seam ripper and open that, or my fingers are just too pudgy. But I wanted to show you the little four square that happens in that. So I had to use my seam ripper and get that. So I have a little patch right in the center of that, and what I do is I will put the nose of my iron right into that Okay, then I will press so that these are going the way they should on either side. Okay, and then I'll go back and just give the whole seam line a good press. And I get a pretty flat seam, and my points they're all coming into that. But if you don't seem to get that or want it even flatter and you are not opening up your seams, I love this precision piecing product from Acorn, and they usually carry it in the shop, so if you haven't used it before, I think you'll find it rather amazing. And I have the pin that you can put it in, so basically it's just setting this down, and let me put those to the side, and then you can go back and set that center seam again. And I usually don't need to do this, and a lot of the stuff came out, so it kind of got a little bit more wet than I usually like it. So basically I'm drying it, and now the flatness is incredible, and there is no bulk whatsoever, and those points are coming together. So you would make 4 of those units, put them around the center with your 6-inch white squares in the 4 corners, so each row, and then your block would be finished. Okay, let me put this one aside, and we'll take a look at the next block. I don't have to show you the sewing of half square triangles this time, so we'll talk our way through February. And so here we go with our February block, and again choosing your fabrics, sewing your half square triangles together. But the difference on this one is how you sew or how you press your seams. If you're going to be pressing to the side, I would encourage you to wait to do the pressing, because as each of these blocks come together, you're going to need to know whether you're sewing, you're pressing to the top or pressing down to the bottom. I went through and kind of marked it. I would share those marks with you, but I messed it up at the beginning with that. So let's just take a look at one whole strip that I did. All right. So this is the top row, and you're going to be making these, I call them butterfly units. Those butterfly units are the 4 corners, all right? And then the center unit, you're going to make 4 of these where you have the top of your points coming up here, and those are the side, and then you have the 1 center block. And again, you're going to sew them in 3s. And as I was choosing where I was going to put my colors, I simply went around and put my 2s together so that none would, the same fabrics would butt up against each other, that kind of thing. So again, you're going to need to know, if I press this block down, I need to press the center block up. So these 2 are down, this one is up. The center block is going to work similarly, but when you press these 2 seams here, so I press those in on both sides. So if I press these 2 seams in, I need to press these out. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. And then these would be pressed out again. So these would be pressed in, these would be pressed out, and you would, you know, do the pressing the same way you did this top row here. So anyway, it's going to be the pressing that is going to help keep this block flat and doing it well, if you will, with that. So I did not, when I was sewing this top part, I did not press them until I had all of my units together or sewn together, and then I decided, you know, which way I was going to press. And this is going to make a difference which way you press this one, because when you sew this middle unit together, you're going to want this center seam of the middle unit opposite of what you press each of these. Does that make sense to you? I'm hoping it does. All right, I'm going to go back and check some questions before we thank you, Suzanne. I just, I know this is going to be repetitive, and as we go along, I'm going to try to bring in new, new techniques and new things, and just keep reminding. Did I lay out all the pieces of my block before you press to figure out which way to press? Yes, I did. Even though I have, some of my middle row already done, I had everything laid out before I did any pressing at all, so that I would know how to press it. And, your ironing board is great for that, because you can, put it all on the end of your ironing board and then move your pieces over and press them as you needed to. And then mark up your pattern so that if you ever make this again or whatever. I always use my walking foot when seeing a bias seam. That's not a bad idea, Kathy, to do that. Okay, I think that was the questions I saw. Anyway, so with February, it's more, you already have your two options for making your half square triangles. And so the big deal on this block is the pressing of it. So again, you're laying out your entire block and making the decisions which way you're going to press it. I have to do it that way because I'm a visual learner. If you are, a pattern and can look at it and see it and go for it, you can go ahead and look at this and put your arrows in as to how you're going to press it before you even start, and then you can press as you go. That's not the way I learn the best. I'm a visual learner, so I put all of my pieces as the block would have presented itself, and then I made my decision on which way I was going to press it. Okay, so that is January and February blocks, and I'm going to just put those aside. And then March, as I said again, if you haven't chosen your fabrics, you would choose your fabrics when you get those blocks sewn. And I am really going to make an effort to make sure that all of my charm squares are different, because I think it adds some lovely variety, because you're going to get 2 half squares from each of them as it is. So this one was a very different palette, but it's a fun one. Again, I tend to go to the little bit brighter of the dulled out fabrics. So that's how I chose mine for March. And then this was April. It's a very gray and a little bit on that side. Kind of fun. Again, so chose my my 8 from that for the April. So if you can have those ready for next week. The colors are rather stunning, and these look really still good with these, a little bit brighter and fresher blocks on this, they still look beautiful as the quilt is coming together. And it's really fun to see that, and it's a good lesson on color choosing too. So finish blocks 1 and 2. Get to choosing your fabrics if you haven't already, or have those ready and cut. And the cutting instructions are very simple on the back. I mean, it couldn't get any easier than that. So mostly 4-inch squares that you're cutting out of your charm packs and your white. Now I have something really important to tell you. Your kit came with not enough background fabric. And so the background fabric is going to be sent to you. All right? If you bought the kit. And you don't have to do anything to get that fabric sent. I think it's like 3 more yards, 3 and something more yards of fabric. And except the only thing you would have to do is, if since you got your kit, you moved or have a different address, then you need to contact the Quilt Show and let them know that your address is not the same to where you send 3.75 yards of fabric. Thank you, Kristen, for throwing that up there. It just kind of blanked out. So that fabric is going to come to you because they did not put enough background fabric in the kits when they sent them to you. So no cost there is no charge for that. They're sending it to you. The only thing is if your address is changed. Kirsten says they're going to send every kit purchaser an email next week with all of the information. So you're going to get clued in a whole lot better than I just clued you in, and so that you will have enough fabric for finishing the top of your quilt. So I will see you next week, and really look forward to that. And have just a great and blessed week wherever you are, and keep good thoughts. And if you can help out with what is going on in Southern California, do that as best as you know how, or you have the availability to help there. So anyway, blessings to all of you, and I'll see you next week.